Hello there. Oh, sorry for the infinite loop. So, yep, I'm going to talk to you about how to create custom DevTools for your Nuxt application. Yes, just confirming that everything was looking all right. Okay, so hi there. My name is Paul Melero. I am working at BackMarket, but previously I was in Love to Know Media. You might also know me for VueDose or because I'm in Twitter all the time. So this is you without the proper tools, you will lose control, and probably your company would look like this, hopefully with a better gender representation, right? So why do we need custom tools in the first place? Well, that's a great question. Some use cases for custom dev tools. You could use them to activate or deactivate feature flags, and I'm going to talk about what are feature flags and what can they be used for. You could use them to intercept and modify requests and even support offline development because you can mock responses, for example. You could fake some user roles or any application state. You can trigger app events that would be otherwise difficult to produce. And you can also share configuration to other stakeholders, share a specific application status if you implement this in your DevTools. So yeah, feature flags. Let's see what are they. My friend and idol Alberto Jimeno recently talked about feature flags on Twitter. So they are not just about toggling features. Of course, you could use them to build new stuff, hide stuff that you're building in production, and only make it available for your teammates or for beta testers, right? So this means that if a feature flag is activated, it is true, then you will render something or you will change the application behavior, something like this. You can also use them for A/B test. For example, if you enable some experiment for a percentage of your users, then you can change something in your application for those users. You can use them to deploy without risks. For example, if you are afraid that a certain feature that you're adding could be a little bit dangerous, you can deploy this new feature with the feature flag turned off and only test it in a controlled environment. And also, you could roll back some changes without doing any changes in the code. So it is way easier to roll back a feature flag than to roll back a piece of code, and usually requires less people involved. You could use them, I don't know, for testing the performance of your application. For example, to test two different procedures and measure them. You could run either one or the other for a certain amount of the users, or you can run both for a certain amount of users and measure the performance. You could use them as kill switches as well. If you want to, I don't know, disable some feature on a given day, then you just program a release with this feature flag turned off. You could use them for maintenance mode. I don't know if you are going on holiday or if you just want to restart some piece of your system and you want, I don't know, your database to be read-only. And you can use them for sunsetting as well. And this is what sunsetting is, disabling a feature basically, but you will do it for a percentage of your users and see if they complain on Twitter or not. So how do you test a feature flag in runtime? I mean, how can you change a feature flag in runtime? You could, I don't know, have dynamic URLs, for example. This means different deploys. Platforms like Netlify or Vercel already do this by default. They will ship a different staging URL for your different pull requests. So you could activate some feature flags in this pull request. And you could, if you implement this, you could use search parameters as well. So passing a specific configuration in the URL will enable or disable some feature flags. You could use an IDE plugin if you go full crazy and you want to build a feature, a testing environment, but this is only good for the developers. You could use a browser extension and share it with your teammates as well, or with the people at your company, or your beta testers if you want to change certain things in the application as well. And or you could have a special UI injected in your application that it's only enabled in a controlled environment, and that will allow you to change things in the application. And do you guess what I'm going to be talking about next? So yeah, this is a little comparison I did, but I'm not gonna cover it all. In my opinion, the dynamic URLs is the most costly and difficult to implement if your platform or infrastructure doesn't support this by default. The URL parameters is the cheapest and easiest probably, but it's a little bit limited because you will depend on the URL state. And the UI, the dedicated UI, in my opinion, is easier and also less costly. But I'm totally biased here, so you will need to decide on your own how to test these kind of things. A little disclaimer. This is not an original idea of mine. I heard this first from Corey House on Twitter. He was building Switchboard, a custom DevTools application for a React application. And there's also this very cool article from Chris Goyer about making your own tools. And I've seen people quoting Kent Dodds about making your own DevTools as well for React. And here's the meat of the implementation. Basically, you would inject some environment variables in your application, and this is what Nuxt does by default. Nothing new here. What is new is that you will create a form, a dynamic form. With this configuration, you will turn it into a form, so you can change these values. And in the code, in the application code, you will be accessing this configuration with custom getters. And they won't be accessing the runtime config directly. They will be accessing a mocked reactive configuration that can be changed with this form. But how do you inject this form in the application? Well, enter Nuxt modules. But before I talk about the module that I built, I wanted to give a huge shout out to the Nuxt module builder that the Nuxt team has put up. You can create your Nuxt module with this command. You can start it. So this is kind of like a boilerplate project, but it will also give you commands if you want to build the Nuxt module and ship it as a package. You will run Nuxi, the Nuxi command, and every time I hear Nuxi, I cannot help but to think about something very cute and kawaii. So yeah, I had to add this GIF. And also, a special shout out to this library, NuxtKit. It is a library that encapsulates all the methods that you will need to create Nuxt modules and some other Nuxt stuff. But yeah, very good work by the Nuxt team here. This is what a module in Nuxt 3 would look like. You will need to import this define Nuxt module function from the NuxtKit. And if you are using TypeScript, you will pass an interface defining the module options. So those are the options that your module will support. It has different sections, for example, meta, where you will put the name of your module and how you can access this module in your Nuxt config of your application. There's also a defaults section where you will define the default values for the module configuration. It is optional. And then there is this setup function where you are getting these options and also the Nuxt instance. And here's where all the Nuxt magic happens, the Nuxt module magic. You will add plugins, components, styles, etc. This is the implementation of the module that I did for creating a custom DevTools. Well, this is the simplified version. First of all, I'm just exposing the module options to the runtime config so I can access them in runtime. And then I'm just registering a plugin and registering some components. You will see the output later. Okay, actually, now is the time to show you. Let's hope this goes well. So this is a custom application that I created, very silly to-do application. You will add your to-dos, right? You can mark them as complete, and if you complete them all, this cute cat will show. And this is the DevTools that you see here in the screen, in the bottom of the screen. You can open it, and here it has just one option to change one parameter, FF button color. And if I change it to, sorry, green, red, you will see that this little button here changes its color. I can change it back to blue. And what it's actually doing is this form is getting these values from the runtime config. So I will show you briefly. This is the application Nuxt config and runtime config, where I'm adding here some values that normally would be defined in an environment variable, but I'm also adding a default value here, and this is the one that is being used by default. Later, I'm just registering my module, and with the implementation that I did, it will require you to add one component. So the module, what it's doing is it's getting this value, will create this, and it will create a reactive object where all the different environment variables can be accessed in a reactive way. And of course, no DevTools would be complete if you cannot customize it a little bit, so you can change the position. Well, this is just a little implementation detail that I created. And all the configuration can be also stored in the local storage. Back to the demo. A little conclusion. So in my opinion, you should always use the right tool for the job. And if you can afford it to build something like this for your project and your company, I totally recommend it. I have put this Nuxt module in GitHub, so it's open source. Note that it's just a very simple example of how to implement these kind of things. You might want to implement something more elaborate. And just a quick reminder that that we are hiring at BackMarket. So if you are in Barcelona, you can check the open positions. And yeah, good luck with that. Thank you very much. Questions?
Me and the mute button, y'all. I am just having problems with the mute button. I'll get there. I will get there. Thank you, Paul, for coming to present today. We have a few questions for you. One of which, do you have any other use cases you can share for creating custom dev tools?
Yeah, so this is something that I really wanted to implement, but I didn't have enough time to do. Using a library called Mock Service Worker, MSW, and you could like have like different presets that your application would ingest, and you will just mock different HTTP responses, something like this, and to make the application be in a specific status. So integrating it with something like Mock Service Worker will be really, really nice, and it will give you a lot of power. And also the fact that you could have a custom UI for all of this makes it more approachable for other people in your team.
I dig it. All right. And where can we find out more information on developing custom dev tools?
Okay, so honestly, I don't think there is like an official Nuxt documentation for this. If there is, someone in the chat would share it. But I think the only limitation is your imagination. Basically, Nuxt modules will give you a lot of power to change how a Nuxt application can behave. So I would start by taking a look at Nuxt modules themselves. And I don't know, maybe you can check other examples done in the React ecosystem or something like this as well.
Great. And thank you for, at least giving us some direction on it, because I think that's really important. I have found, since being a developer and a developer advocate and anything to do with it, is the tools of Google. And you have to be really good at Google. And just having ideas of what to search for is extremely helpful. So thank you, Paul. And last but not least, What is something that you're grateful for?
Okay, I don't know. I'm grateful for every day. I think I'm a very privileged person, so I'm very lucky and thankful for that. And I don't know, maybe all the love I get from my family and friends.
I love it. It was a curveball that I've been throwing everybody today. So I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Paul.